Derail the whole general chat into this, actually, so... Oh yeah, but we deleted like half the server. Okay, I'm gonna just make a little other voice room here so we don't have to totally take this over. Just give me a sec.
Okay.
Alright. I'm going to go to General to Confusion Zone.
It was a bit of a ramble.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I guess we could start with your set theory definition and what it's actually meant to, what work it's meant to do.
Well, it's meant to capture what I want to refer to. That definition is going to categorize the kind of people who I want as being male and female in terms of gender. So that's what the work is, I guess, that it's doing. Do you understand how it's working?
No, not entirely. So if you could explain that, that might be a good place to start.
Yeah, so the idea is like you have a set, and then the set is filled with doubles, and each double is like going to be some trait and then some weighting. And then the idea is that someone's gender is just going to be the value that's produced by aggregating the second element, so like the number of all those doubles according to some function. And then you could just say like you could set this up different ways. You could do like female as if the number is positive, male if negative. What the fuck is this person's screen sharing? Is that just them sharing meat or something, or is that tofu?
It's like meat.
Just ban. Okay, well, great, amazing. So that's a new form of trolling. I've never seen anyone do that before.
Why was he doing it so sensually as well?
It's kind of
It's
weird,
like
for sure. So, yeah, and then you could do it in different ways. You could be like female is positive, male is negative, or you could set thresholds, like female as if you're like above 5, or male as if you're like below -5, and then everything in the middle is non-binary. But yeah, that's the general idea. Does that make sense?
It does. But I don't know how you're assigning or even if you're assigning the different values to the different genders to begin with.
What do you mean assigning values to genders?
For instance, why would we associate agreeableness as a female rather than a male trait?
It's just going to be like definitional. So like, as in, this is just the notion that I'm trying to talk about.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm tracking.
Yeah, it's not going to be like there's some like I don't know, like God tells us that like this is like this should have like the female sound like attached to it or something. Like it's just there's a concept we want to capture, this idea about gender, and this is what the idea is. If that's clear, like if it's not, then like whatever is confusing you, ask about it. If there's something else you want to ask about, go for it.
No, that's clear enough.
You can see like some of how this would be useful, right? So like, are you aware of the regressive definition stuff that a lot of people on the left are like pushing right now?
No, completely unfamiliar.
Well, have you seen people define woman as anyone who identifies as a woman?
Not until I saw that debate with you and Arby and Demon Mama.
It's surprisingly common from what I've seen. I mean, admittedly, I'm not the most tapped into the like left sphere. I'm not really a leftist, but I've seen quite a lot of this. It's like very common, and there's even some like sloganization around it, like you're a woman if you identify as a woman, stuff like this, which like I get where it's coming from and they're trying to be positive and inclusive and stuff, but it results in them saying something that like just literally doesn't make sense. So like if you define a term so that the term is showing up in its own definition, you're just going to create this kind of regress where the term doesn't actually have any kind of meaning. Do you appreciate that?
Yeah, I think I referred to it as a vacuous definition, but I'm not sure if that's the right terminology.
Probably want to call it like a circular definition, or like a regressive definition. I mean, you might say it's vacuous because it doesn't, like, vacuous means like empty, like doesn't have any meaning. You might say this has some like unclear meaning, like we know what some of the words in the definition mean, I guess, but not enough that it's actually current. So I guess it's debatable whether the word vacuous is right or not, but we certainly agree that it would be circular though, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we agree in virtue of that it would be incoherent? Or do you think circular definitions can like be coherent?
I don't know. Maybe Darth Dawkins would argue that they can be, but it's not me.
Yeah, well. So here's like a way to think about it, okay? Say that you don't know what woman means and ask someone what it means, and they say anyone who identifies as a woman. How could that possibly clarify to you what the meaning is? The term is being defined in terms of the very thing you don't understand the meaning of.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so if you were to try to understand what's meant, you wouldn't be able to. You can also see by like doing like substitution of the definiens for the definiendum where it appears in the definiens. So that is to say, if the term being defined is woman and it shows up in the definiens, you can like substitute the definiens for the occurrence of the definiendum in the definient. It's a lot of words, but it's just going to give you a regress. It's just going to be like a woman here. In fact, I could. Do I want to type it? Are you able to look at general?
Yeah.
Okay. Who identifies as woman? Okay, and I guess I'm gonna highlight where the word shows up in its own definition. Okay, so someone gives you this definition. Okay, so I'll kind of show you what the regress looks like. So if we try to understand what it means, like you can see, it's just going to keep expanding out like this without ever terminating in any kind of clear meaning. Do it again here. So, like, do you kind of appreciate like the problem here?
Yeah, I mean, no matter how far you go in the regression, at no point is the term woman ever defined. So.
Exactly. That's completely right. So, if that's like, if people say that's what they mean, like, their meaning is, like, we agree that a definition like that is incoherent, right?
Yeah.
And then there's going to be other problems because you understand that, like, terms can be in constitution relations with each other, right? Like, this term is constitutive of this other term. That's uncontroversial. I'm assuming you don't disagree with that.
Yeah, so is that, I'm not familiar with phrasing it in that way, but do you mean that one term can be dependent on another?
That's a fine way to say it, yeah. Dependent on, yeah, I mean, you might want to be careful about what exactly you mean there, but that's the right idea. Like, dependent on the other term to, like, have meaning, or something like that, that would be fine. But yeah, if you have something that's you have one term that's constitutive of another term, but the first term is incoherent, then the term that depends on it, to use your language, is also going to be incoherent. Do you disagree with that?
No, I think that follows.
Yeah, so if gender is like defined in terms of like woman or man, then we're going to get gender also being incoherent. And if transgender is defined in terms of gender, right, or depends on, to use your language, we're going to get transgenderism itself being an incoherent term. And like, surely that's a bad thing. Like, presumably we don't want a definition that like gives us that result, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. MJ ripped a woman in this. Yeah, so like the set theoretic definition is just a way to capture the people who I want to capture as being female or male, or you didn't like me using those terms, being man or woman, because you take those to be about sex, right? So let's just say man or woman. So this is a way to capture the kind of people who I want as being man or woman, like all the people who we would look at and say, yeah, like I want to call that person a woman, I want to call that person a man. This will classify them in the kind of way I want, and there won't be any kind of like regress problem.
Okay, but this could be another stupid misunderstanding on my part. But who's doing the classification here?
You mean, well, so there's going to be like a mind independent fact of the matter about who fits a given definition. So there might be like an epistemic concern, right? Like epistemology about like how we know, right? There might be an epistemic concern about if we're going to do the classification right. Like, might we err, whatever the term is, might we err? Now that I say it out loud, I don't know. But might we make some kind of mistake in our classification? Yeah, but that's not going to be a problem if the error is like in virtue of some like failure on our part to classify correctly, right? If there's some kind of deviation between who actually fits the definition and who we classify as fitting it, that's just us making a mistake. That's not going to be a problem with like the definition.
Or a problem with using a set theoretic approach in the first place?
I think that that's just going to be true of any definition, that you could misunderstand what falls under it. You could have some kind of like reasoning error.
Right. So let me see if I follow here. Employing that definition would allow you to say, identify as a man or a woman, and by man or woman, I mean the aggregate of these traits.
Yeah, it's a bit simplistic when you say it like that, but yeah, like I don't expect people to go through a full set theoretic definition in casual conversation. It's just like, this is the level of clarity you could go to if you had to, if someone was giving you the whole shtick about gender not making sense. But yeah, what you said is fine, sure. I identify as so-and-so, and by so-and-so I mean, this.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that's an improvement on, identify as woman or man, and by identify I mean as, identify as woman or man, just a regression. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be an improvement on something that literally doesn't make fucking sense. Like, there's other... I'm not saying that that's the sole thing that's happening out there, right? There's other definitions. And there might be issues with those. Like, Bryn could probably speak to this more than me. I know that there's definitions that are, like, performative, stuff like this, or, like, I don't really know the whole area that well. But, yeah, this seems like a straightforward way to capture what I assume a lot of other people want to capture, without getting any kind of problem.
Okay, that's cool. I think that's resolved the bulk of my misunderstanding. So, cheers for the explanation.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Is there anything else, or is that kind of it?
No, all good. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course, no problem.
like concepts don't have to refer to things we like, right? Like people do this weird thing where they go like I mean, I don't like the idea of like, men being like this and women being like this, and it's like, okay, that's fine. There's nothing normative about a definition. Holocaust has a fucking definition. I don't like Holocaust, right? Like it's you could totally accept that this definition is capturing what I personally mean, or is capturing what the public concept is, and then say you don't think that there should be any social pressure for people to conform to the categories, delineated by the public concept or something like that, right? You could be some like hardcore traditionalist who says everyone better fit in these two buckets and use that concept, or you could be someone who says we should like abolish the idea of like there being any social pressure to conform to any of this and agree and use that concept, right? The concept doesn't have any normative like force to it or something.
Right, yeah, I agree. I mean,
It seems like a weird criticism. It seems like criticizing the term Holocaust because it describes a thing you don't like. It's like, yeah, there's words for bad things. If you take the view gender's bad, I don't see how that's like a criticism of like the concept or something, or the definition, I mean. You're saying you
yeah, I
don't like
understand.
the thing it refers to. That's fine.
Yeah, I understood. That might be where I'm not sure if where turfs are coming from. In the term that if you're defining it, they don't like the idea of having these definitions. They just want there to be almost no gender at all. But I'm not sure about their opinions on that.
I couldn't comment on whatever exactly turf ideology is, and I'm not sure. But I think this is capturing what I'm trying to refer to when I talk about gender. But yeah, it's the criticism that tries to say something along the lines of I don't think these roles should be like enforced, or that people, I don't think that there should be any pressure on people to be like men or women as delineated by this concept. That's just not going to amount to a criticism of like the definition. That's just some separate idea about how you think society should be, and that's fine, right? Like I don't criticize the term Holocaust by going I don't like Holocausts. Like we still want a word to like designate that thing that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, agreed. I think the comments really is you the one saying that it meant those doubles on in those sets. You were just saying you could define it like that, so that would be our answer to the critique that Ben Shapiro gave.
I don't know what you mean when I say I don't think that gender means that. Like I do think that that's what I mean when I talk about gender. And I think that's probably what most people mean, something that could be described in that kind of way. They're referring to, some range of like phenomenological and physiological, maybe like behavioral, whatever characteristics that people have, and some kind of weighting for those characteristics and some kind of function for aggregating those weightings. I think that's the kind of thing people are referring to. You
Oh
also
yeah, I
notice
agree.
you notice that the set I gave was an example set, right? Like you notice I'm not literally saying it is these like 12 traits or whatever. There's a big dot there where you can fill out that set however you want. You could apply the weightings in the way that you think is right, and the function for aggregating them in the way that you think is right.
Yeah, that was actually my point. That you weren't actually
Yeah.
saying that this set is the set. You're just saying this is an example.
Yeah, I guess maybe I overestimated people's ability to like read the notation there, which was actually silly maybe on my part. But there's a dot, so the whole idea is like, yeah, fill it out as you see fit. But this is like the strategy for creating a definition that's not going to have these problems.
Yeah, right. Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. All good, or anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks. You clarified for me.
Okay. All right. Lorenzo Mill, what is it that you think that I'm wrong about here?
Hey, nice to meet you.
Oh yeah, you too.
So I don't want you to think that I think you're totally wrong on this or anything.
Okay.
I just had a, like, I guess, mental disagreement with like this idea that every single word that we use can be like clearly defined by a set of words in like a sentence or multiple sentences or even like as long of a definition as a book.
Well, that's
Uh,
a further claim, right? I haven't even thought about whether that's true because you're quantifying over every word in existence, right? Like
um,
you just said that every word can be defined set theoretically, and I haven't made a claim like that. Maybe that's the case. I
oh,
just I haven't thought about that at all. So I don't fucking know if that's true or not. But that's not a claim I made anywhere in the video.
okay. Um,
Talking about a word, which is woman or gender or whatever.
mhm. So I guess like with regards to the gendered words like man or woman, I would
Hmm.
say that I understand your um like the set thing that you were doing where you're like getting a bunch of different characteristics that are associated with that word and then trying to measure how much the individual matches with that thing.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't like I understand what you're doing there, but I think that you can't 100% claim that there won't be some person out there that literally doesn't feel the way that that categorization, even if it was perfectly including all possible characteristics associated with it, would. Fuck, I just lost my train of thought there. I'm kind of nervous, sorry.
That's
Um,
okay. Don't worry. Just take your time. You can pause for a minute if you need to just think and regain your
okay.
thoughts or whatever.
Um, okay. So, like, I don't think through that method you could claim that there won't be at least one person who will feel differently than what your set theory tells them that they should feel like.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying when you say that. And the set theory doesn't tell people they should feel like anything. It's not a normative notion.
Um, I don't really know what that means.
So there's normative claims and there's descriptive claims. So like a descriptive claim is talking about how something is. A normative claim is talking about how it ought be. So nothing about my definition is like normative. It's not telling people like how they ought be or something like this.
Okay.
But
Um,
so that was one thing I said because you just part of your sentence was how your set theory tells people they ought to be. It's really not my set theory. Set theory is not mine. It's my set theoretic definition of gender. But yeah,
right,
my set theoretic definition of gender doesn't tell people they ought be anything, right? You could use a definition like that and be some fucking alt-right lunatic or be some far left fucking lunatic. I don't know. You could be as far on either side as you want. And they'll hold all the kind of prescriptions about how society should be that are held by either side and use the same definition as we do with definitions like, of chair or of like solar system or something. So that's one thing. There's nothing normative there, but I didn't get the thrust of what your criticism was supposed to be. I was just commenting on that little part of it.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, my headphones just died, so I'm using my mic now.
That's okay.
Can I move this to a different, like a slightly different argument?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I would ask, how you would define like the feeling of love,
Oh,
because
I don't fucking know exactly how to define love, but sorry, go on though.
right, because I feel like there are words such as the word love that there's not really a set of words that can describe how it feels to feel this thing. But if you talk with someone else who has felt love, and you say like these related things that are like characteristics about being in love that aren't the definition but they're related, that person will understand what you're saying. And I feel like the words man and woman can be in a similar uh, type of camp, I guess.
Well, I don't know why you think love would be like, like undefinable. Like there is some, definition of love out there, but it's gonna be some kind of like, I guess, phenomenological thing, and you could like write out those characteristics, and those things are gonna be like what love is about.
What's phenomenological?
To do with your subjective experience.
Right. So, in your video, weren't you arguing that we shouldn't base the words man and woman off of subjective experience?
No, not at all. You could plan. It could be that the majority of the traits in those doubles are phenomenological.
Ah, I see.
Do note that the set has a dot dot at the end of all the doubles, right? So this is a strategy for creating a definition. I'm not literally saying gender is these like 15 traits in a set or something. There's a dot dot there.
Right.
The idea is like fill it out yourself with the things that you think should be in here and the weighting that you think those things should have, and then a function for aggregating them. And the reason I say a function, just to be clear here, you could just add all the numbers, right? But maybe there's weird effects when you have two things present. One of them doesn't have any effect, or like its effect gets like amplified or something like this. And that's why I say aggregate according to a function, because then you can account for any weird like interactions that the things might have with each other. That's a side
Okay.
point though. But yeah, fill it out as you see fit, right? And if you think a bunch of that is phenomenological, which I tend to agree. I don't know what percentage is phenomenological, but I would assume a fucking huge amount of what being trans is about your subjective experience, like surely, right? So there's going to be a bunch of that in there, and that's fine.
Right. Okay. Cool. I think I get what you're saying there.
Okay.
And like so you're saying that like obviously I knew that there would be more than those few things that you listed in the sets. But you're saying that some of them could like even be things that we don't have words for yet, perhaps, or
Just,
in this language, like
just a little nitpick. The set is the one in the curly braces, which is the big thing. The inner ones are ordered pairs, which are technically not sets. They're ordered pairs of two, so they're doubles. But yeah,
okay,
so it's
sorry.
you wouldn't want to call those the sets. Just a little set theory point. But
Okay.
can you say your point again there? I got caught up on that.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
So for example, like I know that there would be more ordered pairs there.
hmm
So would you say that some of them could be things that we don't have words for, perhaps at all, or in English, or something like that? Like just some feelings that we haven't described yet with words, or can't even be described, really.
Yeah, I don't see why that would be logically impossible. It could be that there are doubles in the set where the trait in the double is something that we don't have a word for in our language yet. Now, I'm not sure that is the case either, but it's certainly possible that's the case.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Yeah,
And even
I
if
think I get what you like. I don't disagree with your video or with. Sorry, I don't have like any more points. I guess.
okay, all right, well, I'm glad we could resolve that. And the thing is, even if there's more we need to fill in and we actually have to create some language to refer to certain things, like that's not going to mean that we're not honing in on the right general idea with the definition we're creating. It just means there's some work you'd have to do at some point, and like giving words to certain subjective states and throwing them in there.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
Okay.
it, so it say you were trying to present this to Ben Shapiro, right? Do you
Yeah.
do like I guess the reason I assumed that maybe you didn't feel the way that you did about the things you just talked about from your video was because I guess I thought that you were trying to present this like to someone like Ben Shapiro, who I don't think, well, I just want to know what you think. Do you think he would accept that we can define something by a bunch of traits that are possibly not currently defined?
Well, that's a weird way to phrase it, but I don't know what Ben would accept or not, but I think he would not have any luck fighting back against a definition like this. And my intention wasn't to be like, oh, here's a thing that's agreeable to conservatives. I'm not actually sure it would be agreeable to conservatives. I don't really have a view on that. But it's more just to say like look, when you suggest there's just no clear thing that people are referring to here, like I'm referring to something that's clear enough, and I think a lot of other people are probably going to agree that they're referring to a general thing like this once they understand what the set theory notation is doing there. So
Yeah.
it's more like a pushback to say like, fuck this like bullshit perspective of like there's just no coherent way to talk about gender. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Of course there is. It wouldn't even be that hard a thing to do, like in principle.
Okay, cool. I got you.
Yeah, and to whatever degree there's ambiguity, right? Like we're not sure how strong a weighting is or what the exact function is for aggregating. Like that's not going to pose some like horrible problem. It's just like this is the general strategy. So the overall thing we're doing here makes sense. We don't know exactly how to fill this set out and how to set up the function. Like there'd be like a bunch of further work that's needed to do that, either to capture your own concept perfectly or to capture the public concept perfectly. But we have an idea what kind of things are going to be in there, and we have some idea about what their weightings are, right? Like we're going to say like whether you wear a dress is probably not going to be as important as whether you feel this like deep need to be like treated in a particular way, right? Like we don't have to know the exact weightings of those things to know that those things will be in there, and one probably matters more than the other. Like, right, we can have a bunch of convergence here without knowing exactly how to solve the thing. But the point is, like, here's a strategy for how you would spell out the definition, and it's not going to have the kind of problem Ben was suggesting of being like regressive or something.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I get you.
Okay. Well, I get you. Is there anything else, or is that it for you?
No, I think that's it. Thanks
Okay,
a lot
cool.
for talking this out.
Yeah, no problem. I've been putting response comments on the ones that get resolved. What was your name on YouTube?
It's Miller Industries Inc.
Miller Industries Inc. Let me find this. I'm just looking. Meat Eater Crin. Oh yeah, you left a huge one. I was like, oh my god. Okay, sorry for being a bit mean about that. Okay, I'm gonna say this one was resolved pleasantly on Discord. Because the thing is, I always tell people to come to Discord because it's very hard to reason with people about stuff like this in text. Like if we went back and forth typing this would be a huge it would be like this giant dialogue with all these people commenting. It would have take us hours of waiting for the other guy to respond. So it's just like, guy is a non-gendered term. I'm semi-joking. But it's like that's just a silly way to have a conversation. I understand laying out an initial criticism like that, but I always encourage people to just come by here. Like 4, I guess, counting Watch Dominion, have come here now. And, well, I don't know if Watch Dominion came from the video, but, they raised problems from the video. And we've resolved it with all 4 of those. So I put a little comment there so people reading the chat, maybe they'll notice like, oh, he's saying just come discuss it, and a lot of these are getting tagged with like this one was resolved, like this one was resolved. So yeah. Okay, well, it was good talking to you. Yeah, have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Okay, bye.